Hey, I'm really glad that you're here and you're doing great. Yeah? Okay, good. Have you ever been sent to the principal's office? It's a good, oh, wow, that is a large percentage of our group. That's fantastic. Okay, yeah, I also was sent to the principal's office twice in my schooling years. Once in kindergarten and once my senior year. I figured it would be good to bookend it. So when I was in kindergarten, I was getting ready to go, and I saw my mom pull up in her car, and I started to run. The teacher was like, "You need to wait," and I turned and looked right at the teacher, and I said, "Shut up." And I thought I could get away with it because it wasn't my teacher, and I could just run and get in the car. And so I run, and it's not my mom, it's someone else with the same car. And so I had to walk back and go to the principal's office. And so that was my first experience. And I learned something, though. When you tell a teacher to shut up, you get in trouble, okay? And lots of trouble. And so then my senior year was a little bit different. So I was in a math class, calculus, and so I'm sitting in there, and do y'all have the intercom thing? You know what I'm talking about? It's like, so that goes like beep, and like, "Miss Alexander, could you please send Jonathan Hill to the front office?" And everyone in my class goes, "Ooh," right? And I was like, whatever. I mean, okay, so there's like most likely to succeed. There's like all of those things. I was teacher's pet. So I was like, they're probably going to give me an award. I'm just going to go down there. It's going to be great. No, I've never done anything wrong. And so I go down there and I get in, and Miss Parrish is our secretary. She's like my best friend, one of my friend's moms. Like, I know everybody. Okay, this is a small school, like 400 people in the whole school. Anyways, and so I'm like, "Hey, Miss Parrish," and she goes, I was like, "Uh-oh, this is not good. What has happened?" And she goes, and so she points to this office, and I walk in this office, and it's not the principal. It's a cop. And he goes, "Are you Jonathan Hill?" And I'm like, "Yes." "Do you drive a blue Mercury?" I'm like, "Who put drugs in my car?" I'm like starting to really panic in this moment. And I was like, "Yes." And he goes, "Did you pass a school bus this morning?" So you know how the school buses have those stop signs that are super annoying because you have to sit there and wait for all these kids to like get out super slow? Well, okay, I was behind the school bus. And I was watching, okay, for that stop sign to go, eek. Like the second it started to move, I was gonna floor it and go around in my little 4-cylinder Mercury Mystique, okay? I mean, it was awesome, okay, okay. And it didn't even have a CD player, man. This had a tape player, all right. But anyways, and do you know what tapes are? Okay, anyways, so I'm watching, and the second I went, well, that ticked off the bus driver. He called the police and told them I drove by while the stop sign was out. And so I was in trouble, okay? And sometimes you get in trouble for stuff that you do to yourself, okay? That's the one that maybe stings the most. You've all done this. When you were little kids, you got in trouble, and some of your parents were like my parents, and they believed in spanking, like in a biblical way, okay? Did anybody else? Okay, some of you had that, okay? Some of you, your dad or mom had a wooden spoon. Some of them used a belt. My parents actually had a board that had written on it, "Rod of Correction," okay? And when the rod of correction came out, you were gonna be getting corrected. Let me say that. You're in trouble. And so, yeah, you experience that. Now it's hopefully different. You're like, getting grounded if you do stuff like that. Different things like, your mom says or dad says, "I want you to be home by 9," and you get home at 10, and you're like, why did you get home after I told you to? You said, "Well, you said 9. You didn't say AM or PM, so technically I'm really early for the AM." Okay? Like now you're like double in trouble, and so you get in trouble, and actually you still get in trouble even when you're my age, okay? Me and my wife got married, and we're kind of learning the whole living together thing. And so y'all know the little squirty thing in the sink? Like you have the sink and a little psh thingy. I don't know what it's called. It doesn't work. Okay, it's real funny if you put a rubber band around it. Just try that with your mom. But I didn't do that. I was smarter than that. But I had this problem. I'd pull it out and clean something, and then I would just drop it and leave it hanging in the sink. And so like the first time I did it, she says to me, she goes, "Hey, would you mind putting this back when you're done?" I was like, "Oh yeah, sure, and I'll do that." And then I have a problem. I can't ever remember to do that. And so I'll clean, the next time I cleaned something and I just left it there, and she was like, "Hey, you forgot." And I was like, "Oh yeah." And so the next time she's like, "This thing." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, sorry." And she gets a little, and then one day I'm just in the other room and I hear her yelled from the other room, "Really?" I'm like, I'm in trouble, okay, because I can't remember. So I bought a new sink that doesn't have one. Anyways, and it's much better now. So our marital problems are solved. Anyways, so sometimes you do things that get you in trouble, and sometimes trouble just comes and you didn't even want. You know that person who walked into your life and you're like, drama, okay? I knew you were trouble when you walked in. Somebody had to say it. And so they came into your life, and it's just they're always bringing the drama. There's those kind of people. There's situations that just happen. You did not assign 3 tests on the same day, but that trouble still existed in your life. You know what I mean? There's trouble that comes that you don't have a choice about, that just happens to you. And, you may have gotten the perfect phone case to protect your phone so that nothing would happen to it, and you put it in your pocket so that it was safe, and then you slipped at the fall retreat and fell on a rock and broke your iPhone. AJ. It's like trouble, and I was doing everything right, and trouble still came. Okay, so there's that kind of trouble. And then, of course, there's sometimes really serious things happen. Okay, so I'm talking kind of light about trouble, but you have some real trouble. Sometimes it's like you are really stressed about school because you're not passing that class and you don't know how you're going to pass that class, and it's trouble. It's trouble when your mom or your dad says one of them's going to move out for a while or maybe move out permanently, and that just is trouble. It's trouble when you find out that someone that you love is sick, or when your best friend says they don't want to be friends anymore, or your boyfriend or girlfriend cheats on you. Okay, we all experience trouble. And here's the deal. Sometimes you get the impression from people that when you're a Christian, that means you're not going to have trouble. The only problem is that's the opposite of what Jesus said, okay? And Jesus said this. He made it very clear, in this world you will have trouble. This is Jesus talking, and he says, you're going to have trouble. It's going to happen. And so there is good news about it, but there is going to be trouble, okay? And so you need to understand that if you have trouble, you're normal. Okay, that's everybody. And I'm not saying you have trouble every single day. I mean, I hope not. And I certainly hope you're not getting in trouble every single day. You need to, get right with God and stop messing up all the time. But you have this kind of trouble, and it's going to happen. And then he goes on, and he says, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And he says this, take heart. Because if you've ever been in serious hurt kind of trouble, you know what it's like for your heart to feel messed up. It just feels heavy or tight. You know what I'm talking about? And you're laying in bed and your heart just hurts. And so he says this, he says, in trouble, that you can take heart. And that is that your heart can be right again. That you can take heart, and he says, because I have overcome the world. There's another translation, they kind of say it a little different. They just say this, but take courage. I've overcome the world. Because it's a similar thing. Courage is the ability to face something difficult and overcome it. Okay, you don't need courage if everything is good. You don't need courage to go to marble slab. I think I can do it this time, okay? You don't need, now maybe I need courage to go to Taco Bell, but that's a whole nother thing. You don't need courage to do a good thing, okay? You need courage to face trouble. You need the ability, the strength to face something that is difficult in your life. And so he's saying that you can take courage. Now, it's not really very helpful when you're hurting or you're scared or you're worried about someone and someone's just like, well, feel better. You know what I mean? Does that help you at all? It's like, yeah, thanks, jerk. Leave me alone. That doesn't help. Or, if you're afraid that something's going to happen and they're like, well, don't be afraid. Okay, thanks. Okay, I'm all better now. Thank you for telling me that was an option. It doesn't help. When I was learning to swim, I was I don't remember how old I was, 7 or something. I don't know. Did y'all take swim lessons when you were a kid? Okay. They did. I learned how to swim in the shallow end, all that kind of stuff. And they had a deep end of the pool and a shallow end. You could stand in the shallow, not in the deep. And it was time to jump off the diving board into the death end, okay? That's what I thought it was, as if you went in there, you died. And so I would go out on the diving board, and the lifeguard, he would get in the water and wait for me. And I'd be like, nope. And I walk back off the diving board. So he'd have to climb out, and he'd come back and go, you can do it. Okay, he's like, you can do it. And I'd be like, okay. So I get back in the water, I walk out on the diving board, and I go, nope. And this went on for a very long period of time. And then finally he was like, okay, I'm just going to put you in. And I was like, and I just bolted. And they're like, no running. I'm like, I'm like, not gonna. So I'm running from this guy. Well, my dad's there. And so my dad goes, I'll get in. So he gets in the water, and I go out on the diving board. And now instead of seeing the water, little 7-year-old me sees my dad. I don't know the lifeguard guy. Who cares about him? But this is my dad, right? And so then I was able to jump in because my focus was on something else. And this is what he's telling us, that you can take courage not because you're suddenly super perfect at everything and you got everything in life figured out, but because he said, Jesus, has overcome the world. And because we can look at him, we can overcome. So I want to real quickly show you a story that'll help us understand how to deal with trouble, because I know you're going to have trouble. Because I have trouble, and I want to deal with it right, and I want you, when it comes, if you're facing trouble right now, this is a good time. If you're not, this is something you might want to write down some of this stuff, because guess what? You may face it tomorrow, or a week from now, or a month from now, but I want you to know what to do when it comes. And so there's a story that happens in the New Testament with Jesus. It's kind of weird in ways, but it's interesting, and it tells us a lot about this. So Jesus had told his disciples to get in a boat and go out, and at this point it says the boat was already considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. So they're in their boat, the waves are pushing against the boat, and they can't, they're just struggling against the waves. During the fourth watch of the night, whatever time that is, I don't know, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost. I don't know why they went to ghost. They said, and then cried out in fear. I guess they believed in ghosts, okay? And not Casper. But they're like, this is a ghost, and they're afraid. Okay, they're actually terrified that something's going to happen to them. There's this ghost walking on water. They're freaking out. And it says, but Jesus immediately said to them, take courage, which I think is really interesting. That's the same kind of thing that he said in that other place. But he said, take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. He's like, hey, you don't have to be afraid. It's just me. And that goes on, and it says, Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come out to you on the water. If someone could explain this to me after service, I cannot figure this out. Why does that prove it's Jesus? Like, why can't the ghost be like, yes, come out on the water? And then he's like, okay, bloop, I'm dead. He's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, I don't understand why he had this thing. If it's really you, okay, I'm like, that doesn't help me. Anyway, so whatever reasoning that was that I can't figure it out, maybe you can. Jesus was not, it was not a ghost, it was Jesus. So he said, come. Then Peter got down out of the boat and he walked on the water and came toward Jesus, which is really cool. And I keep trying to imagine what this was like. Was it slippery? Like, was he like, okay. Or was it like walking on normal stuff? Was it going up and down? Was he like walking level? I don't know. I got all kinds of questions. I'll maybe find out someday. But he's somehow walking on water, which is pretty amazing. But when he saw the wind and he was afraid, beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. So he's looking at Jesus, he's walking on water, and all of a sudden he's like, that's a lot of waves. And he's like, oh, this is scary. And he just starts to sink. And of course he cries out to Jesus, and immediately Jesus reached out his hand, caught him. You have little faith, he said, why did you doubt? So here he is, this amazing thing is happening to Peter where he's walking on water, and he starts to look at something. He starts to look at his troubles. And this is what we do. We start to focus. It's really crooked. Sorry. I didn't even think about how to get that level. No, whatever. Okay, he starts to focus on his trouble. His focus went to the wrong place. See, here he is doing this amazing thing. He's looking at the waves, and the more he focuses on his trouble, he starts to have problems. And if you focus on your troubles, you will begin to sink in those troubles. And that's when you just feel that weight and that emptiness and that grossness in the middle of your trouble, is when you focus on that, then you begin to feel that sinking, okay? And so we all have that tendency to focus on the wrong thing, to focus on a trouble, because your troubles kind of draw your attention. But instead, this is what he needed to do. He needed to focus his attention on Jesus. Because what happened was, here he is, he's sinking, he calls out to Jesus, and now his focus goes back. And Jesus is able to lift him up out of that. And when you are able, and I'll kind of explain a little bit how in a second, when you are able to shift your focus to Jesus and away from your trouble, you're going to be able to get victory over that trouble, over that hard time, over that heartbreak, over that thing. When we learn to shift our focus to the right thing. So, it says it like this in the Bible. It says, let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross. Think about this. He knows he's going to the cross. How does he do that? Because he knows there's joy before him. He's looking to that joy that's before him. And in the way that he did that, we need to look to Jesus and know that we can trust in him. And because we can do that, then we can endure the trouble that we have today. Now, you obviously cannot physically fix your eyes on Jesus. I mean, you could like Google images of Jesus, but that'd be really weird if you're like having a hard day and you're like, these are great pictures of Jesus. Who I found sexy Jesus. Okay, like that would be really weird, okay? And just look at a past, it's weird, okay? Anyways, and so like, that's not what you're literally doing, okay? But that's why he goes on, he says, consider him. Oh, this is something I'm doing in here, okay? I am intentionally putting my focus considering him, who endured such opposition from sinful men. He went through some major trouble, okay? So that you will not grow weary and lose heart. And by the way, remember we started with take heart? See, what he does not want us to do is to lose heart, to give in and be overwhelmed and consumed by our troubles. So we need to learn how to overcome our troubles, how to focus on him and to get over these. Because you're going to have these, and some of them are going to be your fault, right? I mean, you're going to be pretending you're Spider-Man and jump from one bench to the other and scrape the front of your shin off at the fall retreat, and I have to go to the emergency room. And it's going to be all your fault, okay? And you're gonna, just kidding. And those troubles are going to happen, okay? I'm hoping not, but you're going to forget to study for that test, and you're going to get there, and there's going to be some troubles, and it's going to be your fault. You didn't write it down. There's going to be those kinds of troubles. There's going to be stuff that happens to you. And life is wonderful and amazing, and the world is beautiful, and it's also difficult sometimes and hard sometimes. And when something happens with your family or a loved one or a friend, and there's this trouble, you have to start to make this intentional decision to consider what Jesus can do in your life. And it is that hope that will shift you out of the trouble. There's something about this. So if you don't learn to do this, okay, I'm going to give you 2 ways to help do this in a second. If you don't learn how to do this, even the little troubles will wreck your day, okay? And you have these, and they will mess you up, and you'll be like, you can't go to sleep at night, and it's this, okay? And here's the deal about, you know what perspective is? Have you heard of this word? Have you ever seen like a stop sign up close, not on the sign? Have you noticed how huge these are? They're like this big. You look and driving by, they look like they're like this. They're huge. Stoplights, they're ginormous. These bulbs are like this. Okay, and they look like they're these little things, because perspective. Okay, when you're close to something, it looks bigger. And here's the thing about troubles. Your troubles, you are always very close to your own troubles. And so you're walking around looking at your trouble like this, going, this is such a big deal. And your friends are like, why are they freaking out? But you're just like, because your perspective is wrong. But if you can take a look at your troubles next to Jesus, you will realize that even what you consider your greatest trouble is tiny compared to what he can do. And then there's one other kind of trouble that we have. It's this one. The one that only exists in your head. You know what I'm talking about? And these are some of the worst troubles and that we have. And I found this quote from somebody. Okay, he said, I've lived through some terrible things in my life, some of which actually happened. Okay, that was Mark Twain. And this is true. Haven't you lived through some horrible stuff in your brain, like at night in your bed, and you're just thinking about all of this kind of stuff? And so here's the deal. We have to learn to take these, that's not where I put it down. Wait, sorry. We have to learn to take these troubles that are in our head, okay, put them aside and focus on Jesus. If you can start to do that, you can begin to let go of those troubles. There are all different kinds that we have. And so what I want to just quickly do is give you 2 thoughts on how to focus on Jesus, how to really focus, okay? And they're going to maybe seem obvious, but sometimes we need obvious. Because when we get in trouble, sometimes our brains just get stupid, okay? And we don't think about the obvious. And so here it is. Number 1 is you need faith-filled prayer. Say it with me. Faith-filled prayer. With me. Faith-filled prayer. Now you're getting it. Okay, so faith-filled prayer. We need faith-filled prayer. Let me show you a verse, okay? Is any of you in trouble? This is James 5:13. Is any of you in trouble? Then he says, he should pray, or she should pray. You should pray, okay? Now, you tell me the Bible is too complicated to understand. I think you got this one, okay? I know part of it is, some of it's like, what, okay? But you got this one. He says, is any of you in trouble? You should pray. And sometimes when we get in trouble, we do everything but that. We do everything but just spend time talking to God. And he says that you should pray. The next verse, he says this, and a prayer offered in faith. It's a faith-filled prayer. Okay, I'll give you a talk about what that is in a second. We'll make the sick person well, and the Lord will raise him up, and if he's sinned, he'll be forgiven. And what I noticed about these is a couple of things. Sin is something I did to myself. Okay, I choose to sin. That's trouble that I bring on myself. Sickness is not something, no one's like, I think I'm going to go buy some cancer. Like, that's not, like, you don't do that to yourself, you know what I mean? You don't do that to somebody. And so this is something that happened to you. This is something that you do to yourself, but both of them are dealt with by a prayer offered in faith. You know, see what I'm saying? Both of them are a prayer that is offered in faith. And this is a faith prayer. Okay, well, I'll tell you what's not a faith prayer. Lord, everything is so horrible, my life stinks. That's not faith sounding, is it? You can start there. Lord, this is a horrible situation. I feel heartbroken. I can't believe that they would leave me like that. But Lord, I know that you're going to help me get through. I know that you have other friends for me, or I know that you have another person for me. I know that you're going to get me through. And you begin to speak the faith even in the middle of the hurt. Do you see what I'm saying? We have to pray the faith that we believe that he's going to do. And so we pray faith-filled prayers. And here's the next one. We need faith-filled people. Say this one with me. Faith-filled people. So it's going to be like this. It's faith-filled prayer and faith-filled people. Can you do all of it? Ready? Faith-filled prayer and faith-filled people. Good. All right. I feel like doing like a groove with it, but I'm not going to do that because I'm not that kind of a cool person. You know, they can make a rap out of it or something. But anyways, it's faith-filled people and faith-filled prayer. And here's the thing about faith-filled people. There are people that are in your life who are there to help you through hard times. And if they're not, you need to get people in your life that will help you through hard times. There's this old proverb in Proverbs 17:17. It says, a friend loves at all time, and brothers are born for a difficult time. And here's the thing. There are people in your life, brothers and sisters in Christ, who are there to be there for you in a difficult time. Faith-filled people. Now, this is part of why we do small groups, okay? And this is just a small thing I want to tell you about that. Because we want you to know when I'm in trouble, who do I call? I'm going to call a faith-filled person who's going to speak life into me, and it's going to be somebody in my small group. And there may be others, but these are some of the people in my life that I know I can go to in trouble. So when I was a senior in college, I had a group of friends who hung out all the time, like really good friends, okay? And so when another friend showed me a group text message that was going around about me. And a couple of these friends who I hung out with every day were saying that they were looking forward to me. They were juniors. They were one grade under me. They were looking forward to me graduating so that I wouldn't be around anymore. And then my other friend, they said that they were going to be sad that he was gone. And as I'm reading this, it was a shock because I had hung out with them that day. They were going to be coming over later that night, and they had no idea that I knew all this. And so it just hit, you know? Like I didn't know what I had done. I didn't know anything was wrong. I thought we were good friends. And so I'm like I went to my room, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm just, feeling broken, feeling that heartache of betrayal and loss and all of that. And so in that moment, I just, I decided I don't want to stay like this. I feel miserable. And so I got on the phone and I called a friend, his name's Nathan, and I said, hey, can you meet me somewhere? And he was like, how about Chicken E? I'm like, yes, okay. Some corn nuggets and some Dr. Pepper with the good ice. You know the good ice? The kind you can chew and it doesn't break your teeth. Yeah, they got the good ice, okay? So Dr. Pepper with the good ice, okay? And I got my chicken and all that. And so I was sure, and so we meet there, and, I'm honestly, it's embarrassing. I was kind of a mess, like, okay, please don't laugh at me when I cry in front of you on my chicken. But I'm like a mess because I just feel like these people have just left me. And he then begins to speak hope into me. See, what he was a faith-filled friend. He was a believer, a strong believer. And he just began to remind me. See, here's what your brain does. In that moment, my brain said, I have no friends. No one cares about me. And he just started to list off all the people that I had friends still. And he was like, you can go hang out with them. You can go hang out with them. This person, of course, him, who's sitting there in front of me. But my brain's saying I have no friends as I'm sitting there talking to a dear friend. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause this is what happens when I look at my troubles. I get so focused on them, it gets even bigger and bigger and bigger, and I make up stuff to make it even worse. This could happen, and that could happen, and nobody anyways. And so he just began to tell me that, and he prayed with me. And I tell you what, I left with heart again. Where my heart. Now, I'm not telling you that I just felt great because my friends had betrayed me 2 hours earlier, but I was heading towards the right way, and I was getting out of that and finding that hope and that trust in Jesus. And so what I want you to know tonight is if you are in trouble, if you are having a difficult time, if there's hurt in your heart, we need to turn to Jesus through prayer and let Christian friends, faith-filled people, build you back up. So tonight we can do one of those. We can pray. Well, and you're getting somebody to pray with you, so it's both of those. And so we're going to just do some of that and believe that your heart will turn towards him, and that you'll take heart again. You'll have courage again to say, I'm going to step forward and be free. And I'm not telling you that means that you just instantly feel perfect. That's not life, but that's Jesus now guiding you out of that. Okay? And so if you're dealing with a trouble, we want to pray with you in just a moment. We're going to stand after I pray. And if you need prayer, people be at the side of the room to pray over whatever trouble that you're facing. Whether you caused it or it happened to you, we want to pray about it. And then when we're done, I would just encourage you to sign up for a small group so that you can get in that kind of a community. Father, I thank you that you are with us in trouble. I pray that when we face difficulty in our life, that our first thought would be, how can I turn my attention to Jesus? How can I give my hope to him? How can I put my trust in him? And Lord, I pray that you would surround everyone here with faith-filled people that they can turn to, that will speak life to them, that will remind them of Scripture, that will pray with them and help them to get through that trouble and overcome. And we thank you for it. In Jesus' name, amen.